Hey everyone, I'm back again. It is very late. Actually, it's very early Tuesday morning. I was doing some freelance work and got a little caught up. So, promise is a promise. Promise new videos every Tuesday. So, I'm just going to record a quick one tonight. Um, just wanted to kind of cover a few things. I got an email, I don't remember from who or whom, but it was about surface transitions and how to deal with that. So I thought a good way to kind of sketch and explain some of that was to do something that's real that does have some transitions, specifically chamfers and rounds was the question. How do you sketch those in? What's my general approach? So I figured I'd go ahead and do that. So I'm going to sketch a printer tonight or this morning, however you want to think of it. And I'm using my Bic Cristal pens. So they're these really cheap pens. You can buy them on Amazon. Again, as always, I'll put the link in there. And if you want to support me, you can buy some of those pens through this link. So I'm going to use a method that I learned in school. And essentially what it is, use my Prismacolor marker here, is as I'm sketching, I try to approach things in 3 steps: form, divide, and then beautify. So the first thing I'll do is kind of sketch the form out, which is kind of the limits, the general basic geometry of the form. Divide that up into its constituent parts, and then beautify that object. Now, I did quickly sketch a thumbnail, just a side view of my printer design, and I can go ahead and kind of sketch in a front view as well of just gesturally of what I think this printer is going to look like. So just some main details. So I'm just going to keep this over to the side here, and I'll use this as my reference as I'm going through and drawing this for you guys. I'm not going to use any markers tonight, just using pens, keeping it simple, keeping it clean. So like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is lightly sketch out profile, or rather the limits of my form. And I'm using a light touch with my ballpoint pen. And so I basically have a 3-point perspective form that represents the limits of that form. Now I'm going to start dividing this shape. And I can even start to add some curves where I think I would need them. And so divisions would imply that I'm breaking things up, but it could also mean addition as well. So if there is some sort of paper shoot in the front, I can sketch that out real quickly. If you're new to my channel, and this is your first time watching one of my videos, this is kind of a relaunch for me. I used to do this quite often, and since then the concept's kind of changed, and now I'm just kind of focusing on sketching with friends kind of approach. So you guys are my buddies, and I'm just kind of sketching as I talk, just to kind of show how I personally go about sketching. And maybe there's another tray here on the top, an auxiliary tray. You might be wondering, hey, your style isn't really tight in these videos, you're not really refining things too much. I'm trying to keep things pretty loose because, well, one, I'm kind of impatient, and two, I just want to emphasize that this is sketching. It's quickly capturing visual ideas and representing those ideas. So now I can kind of switch to, I guess, a little bit of bouncing back and forth between dividing and beautifying. So division in and of itself is beautifying the form. So for example, I may have a material break here. To deal with some of these surface transitions, if you're paying kind of closer attention, I should have done a better job explaining what I did here, but as you can see, I have this guideline running like so, to this point, and I've got another line running down. And just by drawing an angle here and over, I'm starting to kind of cut the form. And if I stop here, bring this out so that these lines go back in perspective, I'm essentially creating Boolean operations on my form. And I can further refine things if I want to add a fillet, for example, on this front surface. Add a section of an ellipse on both ends and kind of round that out. And since we're designers, let's kind of divide this up in a pleasing way. Maybe this will be right along here where I've got some ventilation, or I need to have another part line, for example. And these paper chutes typically extend out or have the ability to extend out, so I'm going to include a little doodad there to help pull that out as I need to. So now I'm going to take my thick Bic Cristal pen, and just by way of information, I'm actually standing up as I'm sketching this. I believe a couple videos ago I mentioned standing up's the best way to get your perspective right, and that's true. In my case tonight, it so happens that there's just no chair in the room tonight, so I am standing up during this whole video. So you can see that by adding some line weight, just really starting to pop my sketch. And I'm trying to hit those lines. I kind of made a couple mistakes there, but I'll clean that up with a shadow so I'm not as concerned through there. And as I'm darkening these lines, the Bic Cristal does have or the Bold rather, has a 1.6 millimeter tip, so it's a little thicker tip than the regular Cristal, so it'll help you punch your lines a little bit more. And I can get some really dark lines where I need them to go. So my tendency as I sketch is I like to think of a light source. In my case, I'm thinking of something coming from this side. So as I do my line weight, I'm going to try and vary my line weight from thicker and darker on this side to lighter as I move around the top. A little bit of shadow here. And let's go ahead and cut this. So most of this is the form and divide steps of my process. And I'll kind of continue that back and forth process as I'm designing. Beautify typically involves adding realistic materials or color to my sketch, and like I said, I'm not adding color tonight. I'm just focusing on getting some good line work in and creating a nice sketch here. So if you're thinking, holy crap, why is he sketching a printer? Well, it is kind of simple, like I said, and I wanted to focus in on some of these transitional elements. But I like to think that the principles that I do cover can be applied to other subject matter. So if you like to sketch robots or cars or shoes or whatever, you can kind of take what I'm showing here and extrapolate and find out what works for you. Or you can send me an email. I'll just call him Joe Schmo 69 because I don't remember his name. But you can send me an email, and if the topic's interesting, then I may very well sketch on that topic in a video. So feel free to contact me. I'm not the fastest at replying sometimes, but I usually do get back. Now I could use tools to clean this up. I could break out a ruler and so forth, but personally I don't like to use tools as I sketch. I think it kind of sucks some of the life out of the sketch. So I'm just going to try and keep this nice and light and lively by not using any tools. Okay, so I've got the chute here, auxiliary paper feed. This is an inlet, and I'm going to turn this into shadow because I don't really want to focus in on the detail on the top there. Maybe these are some retractable guides that help keep the paper nice and level. Let's get our outline finished up. I try to, besides varying the line weight from front to back, I try to think of around 3 line weights for the drawing. So this would be my heaviest toward the bottom, and then somewhere I've got a 2, and then this would be my number 1 line weight. And anywhere there's an edge overlapping another edge, I'll kind of punch that line weight as well, just to show that there is an overlapping surface there. So a couple things you'll notice as I'm shading this is I am using my wrist here, and that's okay if you're using, or rather focusing on smaller areas. I find that it is a little easier to control. So if I'm shading in a very small area, I will use my wrist. But in general, it's good practice to shade with your shoulder. Okay. So now I'll get this area down here, and I'm just hatching, which is drawing a series of lines really close together to create my shadow. And I'm doing this because I'm just using a pen, not using a marker or pencils to be able to create shadows where I want them. Just a little darker here to have some indication of a logo on front perhaps. And finish up the back here. Okay, so like I said earlier, you can kind of clean up the bottom of your sketch with the shadow, and I'm just going to do a simple drop shadow here. So this will be dropped as well. So now I can shade this in. You see I've rotated my paper to an angle that I like to sketch at. And all this extra line at the bottom here just gets cleaned up by my drop shadow. Okay, so I've got my shadow, my line weight, I've got a part break here. So because I'm using ballpoint and no marker, I can actually do a little bit of shading on the side to show that this is a different color. And I'm just going to lightly take some pressure off the pen and lightly hatch my side in here, keeping a nice consistent angle. So that way I can show that there's a different material here, and this is our general material on this side. Now I am leaving out a few details, mostly because I would like to wrap the video up. But also, at some point, you kind of have to decide how much is too much in a sketch, how much detail to show. And some of that comes just from experience. You'll kind of get a sense of, hey, this maybe feels a little too weighed down, or busy and encumbered. So you'll eventually know just from experience how much is too much. That's another question I get quite a bit. How do you know when to stop? The answer is it really just depends on what you're trying to show and who your audience is going to be. Now, if we had 3 hours, I could sit here, resketch this again, scan it in, do some digital rendering, keep it super tight, but there are better ways to go about doing that nowadays. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching this simple demo of a printer. So remember, we kind of started with these thumbnails and these principles of form, divide, beautify. Form being sketching out the general envelope of the printer, dividing it into its functional parts, and then beautifying the printer by adding details. So here's an example of adding some detail. The screen, you've got the logo, for example, and you could even fake in some UI buttons on the front as needed. So here's how I would create a little bit tighter ballpoint pen sketch of a concept. If you like what you see, please tell your friends about me. Just tell them, hey, there's this dude on YouTube, and every Tuesday he posts a video showing how to sketch products, and I want to be a designer one day, or whatever it is that you want to do. But feel free to share the link. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. There's a new video every Tuesday. I'm hoping to ramp up to 2 a week. You can also follow me on Instagram at sketchaday.com, and all these links are in my channel profile, and I'll post them, links for the video as well as links on the material. Again, if you purchase anything through the affiliate links mentioned in the videos, I get a little kickback. That way I can hopefully upgrade my equipment, get some better audio and video equipment as well. So hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys again next week.